And here's the truth. When you respond to every slight, you give away your power piece by piece. But when you choose silence, you keep it all. You conserve your energy for what truly matters, for your dreams, for your growth, for the people who truly deserve your time. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, but what if staying quiet makes me look like a pushover? Let me tell you something. Silence is not submission. Silence is superiority. It is the ultimate display of self-assurance. Because when you can look disrespect in the face and not flinch, not retaliate, not stoop to their level, that is when you show the world just how strong you really are. Think about the greatest leaders, the most respected figures in history. Many of them mastered the art of silence. They understood that sometimes the most profound statements are made without saying a word, because silence forces people to think. It forces them to reflect. And often it forces them to confront their own foolishness without you ever having to say a thing. There's a proverb that says, empty barrels make the most noise. And isn't that the truth? The people who are quick to disrespect, quick to insult, quick to belittle, they are often the ones who are the most insecure, the most empty, the most in need of validation. And when you refuse to give them that validation, when you refuse to engage, you expose their hollowness. So the next time someone tries to disrespect you, I want you to do something radical. I want you to smile. Not because you're weak, but because you're wise. Because you know something they don't. That your peace is priceless and no amount of their negativity is worth trading it for. And let's talk about this peace for a moment. Because peace is not just the absence of conflict. It is the presence of wholeness. It is the unshakable knowing that no one else's opinion of you defines you. That no one else's words can diminish you unless you allow them to. And when you operate from that place of peace, you become untouchable. Now, I'm not saying you should never speak up. There are absolutely times when you must defend yourself, when you must set boundaries, when you must make your voice heard. But discernment is key. Wisdom is knowing the difference between a battle that needs to be fought and one that's not worth your energy. And most of the time, disrespect is not worth your energy. Because here's the secret. People who disrespect others are looking for a reaction. They're looking for proof that they've gotten under your skin. And when you deny them that, when you respond with silence, you take away their power. I'll never forget something my grandmother used to tell me. She'd say, baby, never argue with a fool, because from a distance, nobody can tell who's who. And isn't that the truth? When you engage in pettiness, when you lower yourself to match someone else's disrespect, you risk losing yourself in the process. But when you stay quiet, you rise above. You remain unmistakably you. And let's talk about what happens when you master this kind of silence. Because it's not just about avoiding conflict. It's about cultivating an inner strength that cannot be shaken. And you refuse to let someone else's words control your emotions. You train yourself in resilience. You teach yourself that your worth is not determined by outside voices, but by your own self-assurance. There's a freedom in that. A freedom that comes from knowing that no matter what someone says or does, they cannot take away your peace unless you hand it to them. And why would you? Why would you hand over something so precious to someone who doesn't deserve it? So I challenge you today. The next time someone disrespects you, try silence, not the silence of defeat, but the silence of strength. The silence that says, I am too powerful to be pulled into this. The silence that says, you cannot have my peace, and watch how their words lose power when they don't get the reaction they wanted. Watch how your own spirit feels lighter when you refuse to carry the weight of their disrespect. Watch how you begin to move through the world with a new kind of confidence, the confidence of someone who knows their worth is not up for debate. Because here's the ultimate truth. When you stay quiet after disrespect, you're not just refusing to engage with them. You're honoring yourself. You're saying, I respect myself too much to entertain this. And that, my friends, is the highest form of self-love. So from this day forward, let your silence be your shield. Let your peace be your power. And let the world learn that the way to get your attention is not through disrespect, but through respect. Because that's the only language you choose to respond to. Continued. There is an ancient wisdom that teaches us. Do not let the behavior of others destroy your inner peace. And isn't that the greatest lesson of all? When someone hurls disrespect your way, they are handing you a test, not of your strength in retaliation, but of your strength in restraint. Will you take the bait? Will you allow their words to rewrite your mood, your day, your sense of self? Or will you stand firm in the knowledge that what they say about you says far more about them than it ever could about you? Let me tell you something about words. They only have the power we give them. Think about it. A stranger could call you a name and it might roll right off your back. But if someone you love says the same thing, it cuts deep. Why? Because of the meaning you assign to it, because of the value you place on their opinion. But here's the truth. No one's words can define you unless you first hand them the pen. So when you choose silence after disrespect, you are making a bold declaration. You do not hold the pen to my story. You are reclaiming authorship of your own life. And that, my friends, is true power. Now, I know some of you may be thinking, but if I don't stand up for myself, won't people walk all over me? And to that I say, standing up for yourself doesn't always mean speaking up. Sometimes the strongest stand you can take is the one where you refuse to engage at all. Because silence is not passive. Silence is strategic. It is the choice to not expend your precious energy on what does not serve you. Think of it like this. If someone throws a rock at you, do you throw one back? Or do you step aside and let it fall harmlessly to the ground? Disrespect is just like that rock. If you catch it, if you hold on to it, it becomes your burden. But if you let it fall, it loses all power. And let's talk about what happens after the silence, because this is where the real magic begins. When you refuse to engage, something remarkable occurs. The disrespect has nowhere to go. It doesn't stick to you. It doesn't become part of your story. Instead, it boomerangs right back to the sender, forcing them to sit with their own toxicity. Meanwhile, you remain untouched, unshaken, free. I want you to imagine yourself as a mountain. Storms may rage around you, winds may howl, but the mountain does not tremble. It does not chase the storm. It does not argue with the wind. It stands firm, unmovable. That is the power of silence. That is the power of knowing who you are. And here's something else to consider. When you respond to disrespect with silence, you give yourself the gift of time. Time to reflect. Time to respond from wisdom rather than react from emotion. Because let's be honest, how many times have we said something in anger only to regret it later? How many bridges have been burned in the heat of the moment? But silence? Silence never leads to regret. Silence never escalates a situation. Silence keeps him in control. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. Oh, no. There have been times in my own life when I've had to bite my tongue so hard I thought it might bleed. Times when every fiber of my being wanted to lash out to set the record straight, to make sure they knew exactly what I thought of them. But over time, I learned something invaluable. The high road is only lonely until you realize the view is better. Because when you rise above pettiness, when you refuse to be dragged into negativity, you begin to attract a different energy into your life. You become a magnet for peace, for respect, for people who understand your worth without you having to prove it. And isn't that what we all want? To move through this world surrounded by those who lift us up rather than tear us down. So how do you cultivate this kind of unshakable silence? It starts with knowing, truly knowing, your own value. When you are secure in who you are, when you have a deep and unbreakable relationship with yourself, no one else's opinion can shake your foundation. You become like a tree planted by water, roots so deep that no storm can uproot you. And let's talk about those roots for a moment, because your roots are your truth. They are the unshakable beliefs you hold about yourself. I am worthy. I am enough. I do not need to beg for respect. When these truths are firmly planted in your spirit, disrespect becomes nothing more than background noise. Annoying, perhaps, but ultimately irrelevant. Now, I want to speak directly to those of you who may be thinking, but what they said really hurt me. And to that I say, your feelings are valid. Disrespect does hurt. But here's what I've learned. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. You can acknowledge the hurt without letting it define you. You can feel the sting without letting it poison your spirit. Think of it like this. If you accidentally touch a hot stove, you pull your hand away. You don't stand there holding on to it, letting it burn you deeper. Disrespect is the same. The initial sting, that's natural, but holding on to it, that's a choice. And you, my friend, have the power to choose differently. This is where silence becomes your greatest ally. Because in that quiet space between the disrespect and your response, you find your power. You find the clarity to ask, does this deserve my energy? 9 times out of 10, the answer will be no. And that 10th time, that's when you respond, not from anger, but from wisdom. Not to wound, but to make your position clear. There's a beautiful quote that says, speak only if it improves upon the silence. Let that sink in, because most of the time, our words don't improve upon the silence. They clutter it. They complicate it. They give weight to what deserves none. But when you master the art of strategic silence, you learn to speak only when it matters, only when it serves, only when it aligns with your highest self. And here's the most beautiful part. When you stop responding to disrespect, you start attracting respect. People begin to treat you differently when they realize you won't engage in pettiness. They either rise to meet your standard or they fade out of your life. And either way, you win. So, I challenge you today. The next time someone disrespects you, take a deep breath, count to 3, and ask yourself, will responding to this add any goodness to my life? If the answer is no, and it usually will be, let your silence speak for you. Let it say, I am too focused on my blessings to dwell on your bitterness. Because here's the ultimate truth. Your life is too precious to be spent reacting to those who don't matter. Your energy is too valuable to be wasted on those who don't deserve it. Your peace is too sacred to be sacrificed at the altar of someone else's disrespect. So stand firm in your silence, stand tall in your truth, and watch as the world either rises to meet you or falls away, leaving only those who truly deserve a place in your extraordinary life. Would you like me to emphasize any particular aspect, such as workplace disrespect, family dynamics, or self-worth principles as I continue expanding? I can also incorporate more metaphorical language, historical examples of leaders who use silence powerfully, or psychological studies on the impact of not reacting to negativity. Let me know how you'd like me to proceed. There is a sacred alchemy that occurs when you transform disrespect into silence. When you take the poison someone tries to pour into your spirit, and instead of drinking it or throwing it back, you simply let it evaporate into thin air. This is not avoidance. This is alchemy. This is the spiritual practice of turning lead into gold within the crucible of your own consciousness. Let me tell you about the physics of energy. What you resist persists. What you react to, you give life to. But what you observe with detached awareness, that loses all power over you. When someone speaks words meant to diminish you and you meet those words with serene silence, you break the cycle of energetic exchange. Their words become like arrows shot into an endless sky. They simply disappear without ever hitting their target. I want you to consider the lotus flower. It grows in muddy waters, yet remains untouched by the filth surrounding it. This is the perfect metaphor for how we must learn to be in the world. There will always be mud, people projecting their pain, their insecurities, their unresolved traumas onto you. But like the lotus, you have a choice: to absorb the mud or to rise above it. Silence is how we rise. Now let's talk about what silence really is in these moments. It's not just not speaking. It's an active, intentional state of being. It's composed of 3 sacred layers. First, the silence of the body. Your posture remains tall, your facial expression neutral. You don't flinch, don't recoil, don't give the satisfaction of seeing you physically react. The silence of the mind. You observe the words coming at you, but refuse to let them take root in your consciousness. You don't mentally argue, don't replay the insult, don't compose responses you'll never deliver. The silence of the spirit. This is where true mastery lives. It's the unshakable knowing that no external voice can alter your intrinsic worth. It's the soul deep understanding that you are a child of the universe, and no mortal's opinion can change that divine truth. When you master these 3 silences, something miraculous happens. You become immune to disrespect. Not because you've built walls, but because you've dissolved the hooks that disrespect needs to latch on to you. Let's examine why people disrespect others in the first place. Like a doctor diagnosing an illness to properly treat it, we must understand the root causes to properly immunize ourselves against their effects. Disrespect typically springs from one of 3 poisoned wells. The well of insecurity. When people feel small inside, they try to make others feel smaller. Their disrespect is a desperate attempt to level the playing field in their fragile psyche. The well of pain. Hurt people hurt people. Those acting from unhealed wounds unconsciously try to spread their pain rather than bear it alone. The well of ignorance. Some simply don't know better. They were never taught basic human decency, never shown how to treat others with respect. When you understand this, your silence becomes not just a reaction, but a sacred act of compassion. You look at the disrespectful person and think, what pain must you be carrying to act this way? This doesn't excuse their behavior, but it does free you from taking it personally. Now let me share with you the 7-fold path of silent strength, the spiritual practices that will help you maintain your peace when tested. 1, the practice of the pause. When disrespected, consciously pause for 7 seconds before even considering a response. In that pause, reconnect with your center. 2, the practice of sacred breathing. Inhale deeply, imagining you're breathing in divine light. Exhale slowly, releasing any hooks the disrespect tried to plant in you. 3, the practice of energetic shielding. Visualize a golden light surrounding you, allowing only truth and love to penetrate, while deflecting all negativity. +4, The practice of perspective. Ask yourself, will this matter in 1 year, 5 years, on my deathbed? The answer will almost always put things in proper proportion. 5, the practice of compassionate detachment. Wish the offender healing in your heart, then release them from your mental space. 6, the practice of silent reclamation. After an encounter, spend 5 minutes in intentional silence to recalibrate your energy. 7, the practice of conscious response. If a response is truly needed, let it come from this place of centered wisdom rather than reactive emotion. When you make these practices part of your spiritual toolkit, you'll find disrespect slides off you like rain off a lotus leaf. You'll develop what the Zen masters call the mind that doesn't stick, where nothing negative can cling to your consciousness. Now I want to speak to a deeper truth. Your silence after disrespect isn't just about that moment. It's about the life you're building, the person you're becoming. Every time you choose silence over reaction, you're sculpting your character. You're forging an unshakable inner strength that will serve you in all areas of life. Think of your willpower as a muscle. Every time you resist the urge to engage in pettiness, that muscle grows stronger. Over time, what once would have sent you into a tailspin of anger now barely registers. You become like a spiritual warrior, calm in the eye of every storm. There's profound neuroscience behind this. When you consistently choose non-reaction, you're actually rewiring your brain. The amygdala, the alarm center that triggers fight or flight, becomes less reactive. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for wise decision-making, becomes more dominant. In essence, you're biologically transforming yourself into a more peaceful, powerful being. This is why spiritual traditions across time have valued silence as the highest discipline. The Quakers worship in silence. Buddhist monks take vows of silence. Desert fathers and mothers sought God in silence. They understood what modern science is now proving. Silence isn't empty. It's full of transformative power. Let me tell you about the silence of nature. The oldest trees don't argue with the wind. They bend. The deepest oceans don't protest the storms. They absorb and transform them. The highest mountains don't shout their greatness. They simply stand in silent majesty. This is the wisdom we must emulate. When you're tempted to respond to disrespect, ask yourself, how would the mountain respond? The answer will guide you to higher ground. Now, let's address the fear many have that silence equals weakness. History tells a different story. Consider Gandhi's silent marches that shook an empire, the quiet dignity of Rosa Parks that sparked a movement, the Dalai Lama's peaceful non-reaction to persecution. These were not weak people. Their silence was their strength. Your silence can be yours. There's an ancient spiritual law. What you pay attention to grows. When you give attention to disrespect, even in opposition, you feed it energy. When you meet it with silence, you starve it. This is the secret alchemy the mystics knew, how to transform negative energy by refusing to engage with it on its own level. I want to leave you with this final vision. Imagine yourself as a deep, still lake. On the surface, life may throw stones, disrespect, insults, provocations, but in your depths, complete stillness. The stones create ripples, but they cannot disturb your essential nature. This is the power you hold within you. So when disrespect comes, and it will, remember, you are not the ripples. You are the lake. Return to your depths. Rest in your stillness and let your silence speak the volumes your words never could.